back to In with Denoux.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to In with Denoux featuring Jordan Shannon. Happy New Year. It's been a couple of weeks since you guys have seen us. Thank you for being patient with us, with the holidays and Jordan being out of town and I've been sick and all these different things going on. We took a few weeks off, but we are glad to be back and we hope that we haven't lost our audience. We will be back and have episodes on Mondays. And like I said, maybe a month or two ago, we still are kind of working out some kinks, but I do want to let y'all know that Gio is going to be, a permanent fixture of the podcast. We're kind of working on the logo and adding him in there and working on some different designs if we're going to kind of keep the logo the same but add Geo in or different things. So yeah, there's going to be some changes coming here and there, so be patient with us as we work out the kinks. But I am happy to have Jordan back. It's been a while since we did our Christmas episode. I think was the last episode that we did. Jordan went back home to Florida to visit family during the holidays, and I had a lot of things going on personally and sickness and all these things that happen when the weather gets colder. So we are happy to be back. We're happy that you are back joining us. And I did just want to intro, the episode today because we are starting off the year with the heavy hitter episode. And like we have said from day one of this podcast, episode one of this podcast, is that we want to be real and authentic. And we also do not want to be cowards. When things that are difficult come up in our world, we want to speak to them. And I think that is what Jesus calls us to. And I think just what humanity calls for sometimes is people to speak out on things and not necessarily to throw rhetoric to argue. But just when we see something that is clearly wrong or divisive, to talk it out and have some sort of understanding, not just between Jordan and I, but like our listeners. And maybe sometimes you don't know how you think or feel about something that's going on in the world. And sometimes listening to voices that, do have a thought on these things, that have put into words what they're thinking, what they're feeling, especially from a Christian perspective, can be helpful. So all of that being said, anything that's said today, like if you have thoughts or questions, or if you disagree, if you strongly agree, please let us know, like drop in the comment. And like I've always said too, like I just don't want people to go at each other in the comments. Like if you want to direct that, you can direct it at me. And I think I'm safe saying Jordan can take it too. Like we'd rather you direct it at us than at each other in the comments. But we always want to promote healthy and honest conversation, asking questions if you don't understand. But we don't want to be people that divide, but we do want to be people that tell the truth. And so if the truth is what is causing you anger or whatever, I think that's something you have to work on your own and deal with on your own. And we are happy to have conversations, and also we are open to being wrong, right? So if you have thoughts or whatever, we want to hear those things from you. And we'll always be happy to have dialogue as long as it is respectful. So with that being said, we do want to jump into the things that are going on in our country with immigration, with ICE, obviously, with the shooting in Minneapolis, and all the things that are going on just in general. Want to have a dialogue. And if it is the whole episode, then that's what we will do for this episode. If we do have time and we feel like we've gotten to everything that we feel like we need to say, or the conversation that Jordan and I have, then we will try to end the episode on a lighter note and just kind of talk about some fun things with sports. We got the college football playoff going on. If you're a college football fan, you got the transfer portal and all that stuff going on. So we may get to that, we may not. And if we don't, then we will have another episode next time Jordan and I are together to have some sort of fun dialogue and maybe talking about what we're hopeful for 2026, maybe something that's a little lighter. But once again, we just didn't want to be a podcast that shies away from the difficult things going on. And so, we felt like we needed to at least touch on this subject to a degree before we jump into anything else in the new year. So, with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Jordan. He's going to start us off in the conversation, and we shall go from there.
Yeah, appreciate it, brother. And I think first I want to start off with is giving I guess like a remembrance to Re Renee Nicole Good, excuse me, who is the woman who was shot by ICE and killed, unfortunately, and tragically passed away.
Hmm.
And she leaves behind a wife, she leaves behind 3 kids, and it's just a truly horrific thing that has happened, but and it's really reflective of something that's been kind of reaching a boiling point, or like just a place where it's like you wonder how this will change in our political structure or landscape, just in terms of galvanizing different groups of people and leading people towards different forms of engagement and organization. And on some aspects of that, I love it. Like, I'm excited for it. And also aspects, it's just, it feels, it's very tragic for something like this to be the thing that um catalyzes people, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yep.
I just want to make sure we center that, and also make space for that. Um, the I think the thing that I wrestled with a lot with hearing this news was how quickly it became politicized, and how quickly people were trying to frame it from and when I say people, I'm going to specifically speak to how conservatives was framing it. But um, before there was even any launch of an investigation, there was quick to frame of, the ICE agent who had shot Renee was self-defense, and
Right.
then there's framing of the woman as a terrorist, a left terrorist, a domestic
Right.
terrorist, and 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 it's like there's video was what I'm thankful for is that there's videos taken by bystanders who show
Yeah.
like that she was given conflicting orders. Like, one order she was given was to just get out of here, and I think another officer said get the bleep out of the car. you
Right.
know
Right.
so she's just trying to leave, and even in that same video you see the cars turning away from the officer, but the officer is standing in front and drawing his weapon. So it's just
Yeah.
it's it's a very, very heightened stressful situation, right? And that's to say the least. But yeah, I think I felt myself even feel a lot of just anger, specifically towards people in power, conservatives in power, and how it was framed, right? And that's
Hmm.
not to say people on the left, right, like don't have like some issues or anything, but it's just I can't help but name that because it was Donald Trump who was very much saying like almost like justifying the death
Yeah.
of this woman. In
Yep.
actuality, there was nothing in what we have seen that could potentially that could justify her death. And same with the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Christy Denoux. She said the same. She
Yeah.
did the same thing, and I was just like it's not helping, not helping the situation. And it's frankly though on brand for, I think, the larger political ethos. Like, it's not surprising. I think what is even more frustrating as we get away from from what happened with Isaac, I think all of these things do create this kind of like political football kind of thing where it's like,
Yeah.
we're going to frame the left as bad, and we're going to frame the left as evil and domestic terrorists and all of this. Um, and there's not really a a a a, a a sitting with the facts of the matter of just like, we are over policing this community and overusing these resources for the sake of law and order or crime.
Yeah.
Like and I guess I'm all over the place, but I feel a lot of I feel frustrated, but I also think
Hmm.
I'm sitting with a lot of like I was also impressed and moved by just how much people mobilized after hearing of her death and hearing of just the injustice caused by ICE with that. Like, Seattle like organized, and there was like thousands of people marching through the streets
Hmm.
that late last night. Same within Chicago, same within Detroit. Like it's a lot of these communities just like got together just to really put pressure and are encouraging more pressure to be put on our local representatives, just to like, hey, we really need to reform ICE or even abolish ICE. And I think that gets into even a really rich discussion of just like, what does that look like, right?
Yeah.
I think it's not only worthy to have, it's necessary. It shows that we're at a place of like this enforcement agency is abusing its power or being put in situations to abuse its power by its leaders, by and so
Yeah.
it does need to be drastically dealt with.
Yeah.
Um and I think we're at a point where we're gonna see. I can envision a lot of mobility. I hope we use this as a chance to be more uh vocal and more engaged within these resources. So
Yeah.
I said a lot, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I love that because that's a good way to start off the conversation because so before I say anything, in terms of like specifically about the situation or whatever, two things that I wanted to mention is that I think it was in the conversation that we had about the No Kings protest, like right after I had gone out to Seattle in June, and we like witnessed the No Kings protest in Seattle, and obviously it happened in various parts of the country, and we did an episode when I got back kind of talking about that and our feelings about that and whatever. And something I said I believe in that episode is either that episode or the one of our very first episodes where we talked about like race politics and values, I think, um or
Mhm.
whatever, is that I feel like no matter what side of the political parties you stand with, that like every situation needs to be a case by case basis, no matter like who you are or what party you're in or um and I believe I said that it's like I hate that again some people, I'm not going to generalize, automatically take the side of like the party they're affiliated with no matter what the situation is, right, which I think is like very um sad, um and also kind of shows how like politics can be like, again, I'm not saying this about everyone, I'm just saying for the extreme sides of the parties, is almost like a cult to where it's like no matter what is done,
Oh yeah,
right, it's like if I'm far right, like anything the right does is right and anything the left does is wrong and vice versa, right, um
right.
which is like so like confusing to me, and like
Yeah.
heartbreaking as well. So I say that to say that like I think the first thing I thought when I was like reading about this, and also I like watched the video before, cuz I had read some things but I wanted to like watch the video before we recorded cuz I hadn't seen the actual like video, not that that was like going to determine like what my stance was on this, but I just kind of wanted to see cuz again like you were saying, like one side was saying like they were saying polar opposites, like I was just kind of saying is that
Mhm.
you know in any situation, like I feel like both sides, um, and obviously, like usually one side is more like seemingly obviously in the wrong than the other. I feel like, but it seems like to me that when these big situations happen, um, sorry, what I'm trying to say is that what made me sad in this situation is that when I started reading about the incident, all the stuff I was getting was like what you were saying, Jordan, like Donald Trump and whatever, like a lot of people that are right wing were saying like this was self defense. like this was a act of terrorism, which is crazy. Like act of terrorism is wild, um,
Mhm. Mhm.
or whatever. Um, but it was like nothing was really like about the death of this woman, Renee, Good.
Mhm.
And like that kind of saddened me is that like I feel like our society, and not that this is like brand new, but I think it's like just a continuation of who knows how long, like if it dates back to the existence of the world. But what I mean is that with the introduction of the internet and social media and whatever, like this stuff is thrown at us immediately, as before, you know, you would read about it the next day in the paper, or even before that you'd find out word like mouth, you know, word of mouth, whatever. But
Yeah.
because now everything's so publicized, I feel like death has just become so normal that it's like
Yeah.
someone dies and immediately it becomes it's the left's fault, it's the right's fault, it's the right's fault, it's the left's fault, you know, or whatever.
Right.
It's the United States fault, it's the immigrants fault, you know what I mean? Like it's, instead of like, man, like someone died, and regardless of who was like in the right, who was in the wrong, like no matter what the situation was, I'm not saying just to this situation but just in general, is I feel like life has become like almost expendable, to where it's like it felt like reading these articles, no matter what outlet it was from, it was about trying to make sure either on the right side it was like this woman was in the wrong, and it felt like, what it felt like to me was it wasn't about proving right or wrong for this situation. What it felt like was, let's try to push this incident down so we can keep going with our overall agenda. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What I'm saying, like,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
it felt like this woman dying was like a speed bump in the process that they're trying to do with ICE, like finding
Yeah.
illegal immigrants. You know what I mean?
Well,
Which was
well,
sad to
that's how
me.
you justify. That's how you can justify having ICE go into these communities
Right.
and profile folks, right? Like that's how.
Yeah.
Like it's when you give them the freedom to be able to skirt the constitutional rights of people and
Yeah.
just like load them in vans, tackle them, like
Yeah.
just like detain them, unlawfully detain them, you know, like that if you believe that that's a good thing, if you believe that that's the right thing, then her death, you have to try to justify it in those
Right.
ways.
Right.
And I agree with you that it is. I would say with like you said with technology, there is this like normalization of these tragic things that we
Yeah.
become so accustomed to, that almost makes you wonder of like, what are we doing to try to change this? Is there anything like where's the hope that this is not the way it has to be? You know what I
Right.
mean? Like
Yeah.
where's the hope
Yep.
that this is something that we can actually take action against and mobilize and try to and really commit hours and money and resources to ensuring that this does not happen. And
Yeah.
unfortunately our energy is mostly spent at, like you said, trying to find fault with like um the ideologies of either side of the political aisle. But I'm thinking like I guess I'm sitting with just a lot of yeah, like like where's the hope, you know?
Yeah.
And I think some of that hope really comes into play with like for me, the hope comes from seeing like there's a lot of mobilization and traffic, uh like high traffic of like people wanting to like really reach out and like take this as a political cultural moment. And I think we should, like I think we should see this as a chance to like, can we see real work be done at our Congress level, at our
Right.
congressional level? um it's potentially right. Like I I I can also understand if people feel like no, there's nothing we can do, you know, because
Yeah.
of like how these things have been dealt with in the past. Like how many people have been killed within schools? How many people have been killed just walking down the street, right? And how many like black Black people have been killed, like brown folks been killed, just like at the hands of police while they were being unlawfully detained. Like it's just like, and yet there hasn't been any changes in legislation or changes in how we live. It's kind of like, oh yeah, another, like you could, it's almost like this is a very sad thing to say, but it's almost like you could count like you know how you get notifications about like your sports teams on your phone of like, oh, your team's about
Yeah.
to start playing or a touchdown's about to score. You can bet that you would get notifications like that about the news of like this
Yeah.
gunman kill people in a racially motivated attack, or you know what I mean, or something
Yeah.
like, and it does make us question. I mean, I feel like for a lot of people have lost faith in humanity a long time ago.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you know, as Christians,
Keep going. I'm getting
like
a
I said,
napkin.
oh yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Keep
I was
going.
gonna say, as Christians, there's this difference of hope that we ought to have, right? Like there's this difference of like, yes, tragedy and pain and all of these injustices come into the world, but we have to see that we are committed to trying to alleviate some of those things, right? And ultimately, Jesus is the one who will alleviate all of it, but we have to be making sure that we're not contributing to the oppression and the marginalization that's
Right.
happening within that. Uh, and you know, I I'm glad you brought up the No Kings protest because we went to one, maybe the most recent one. I can't remember the date. I think it was sometime in November. Um, I think it was sometime in November. Um, but we went to one, and it was very like it was one of those things that I'm like, man, I wish I had been going to these more often. Now I also
Mm-hmm.
recognize like my stage of life and having a small kid and all these things and just
Right.
different like but I also think that it was really cool to be with thousands of people to just be like actively doing something to try to like push back against the larger political influence at the time, right? And
Yeah.
a lot of us were chanting abolish ICE in that protest. And I sit with that, I'm still on that same train. And I think that gets into questions of like people can probably ask like, well, what do you mean by I think a lot of people this gets into a different discussion, but what do you mean by abolish ICE, right?
Yeah.
And I think by definition, we're talking about formally ending it, but that does not mean we would use the resources that we put towards ICE to other community-based services that can have just just as effective, if not more effective. That doesn't have to be laden in a criminal punitive structure. That does not mean we don't have
Yeah.
some form of law enforcement, but it's just looking at like what are some other systems that we have not tried, like that we can be able to implement that would actually be more just and more
Yeah.
and and actually having a true pathway to citizenship,
Yep.
where folks don't
Yep.
feel like they're afraid to go walk out around outside or feel like they have to use their passport, like have their passport on them all the time. So yeah, I guess I'm sitting with a lot, but I'm coming back to this essence of like hope of this is a critical. It feels like another critical point, and like that we can use to mobilize more. And I'm
Right.
curious to see where we go with this moving forward.
Yeah. I'm glad you went in that direction towards the end there because something that's like um you know me, I'm a processor, right? So like to me, I feel like lots of times when we talk about these things, I'm always the one that seems like this like I'm kind of all over the place with my thoughts
Mhm.
on this stuff. But and then later on like when we're not like when there's not a camera on my face, I have a lot more clear thoughts. But it's interesting because we even said and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jordan, but on the No Kings protest, what we had kind of said and I believe agreed on was that nobody is advocating that like everyone everywhere should just be able to like fly into wherever country they want to go and then just be a citizen all of a sudden like with no without going through the proper like channels, right? Like no one's
Yeah. Yeah.
advocating for illegal immigrants, like in terms of going about it the wrong way. But I like what Jordan's saying, because in my mind, um, I feel like, and when I say I feel like it's not even a feeling, it's just truth, is that what's happening in our country right now is that everyone, when I mean everyone, I mean all immigrants, legal or illegal, are being treated as the exception to the rule, if that makes sense. And what I mean by that,
Yeah. Yeah.
what I mean by that is that, like what Jordan is saying about this hope about being able to do something within the laws of our country, like there's this hope that we will be able to come to some agreement to do it this way, to where it's not over policing or with like lethal force or just force in general.
Hmm. Yeah.
In
Yeah.
my mind, I'm like, man, how do we get to this? And I get that, like I said, there are exceptions, and I do think that sometimes it can be difficult that when there is an exception to the rule, that's like someone that's super violent or that commits a crazy crime, on a American citizen, that can sometimes make you over step maybe where you should, right? Like I can get that we do that in our personal lives, right? Like or whatever. But when you have a whole government where you're supposed to be able to have all of these people come together so that that doesn't happen, right? So that it's not just like an emotional decision by one person or two people to um swing the pendulum all the way the other way, right? So in my mind I'm just like, man, why can it not be, where sure, like you don't want to have millions and millions and millions and millions of people coming over the border like unchecked and just out in the public, and they're not unaccounted for, whatever, because there are sometimes people that are committing crimes, violent crimes, whatever. So in that sense, it's like it's understandable to want to figure out something um to better enforce like a border policy, or like Jordan said, like being able to become a citizen and have like, even if someone does come across illegally, right? Like I do feel like there should be a way where like, hey, yes, you cannot be here and like working or whatever, but we have this program to be able to uh become a citizen, like have some sort of path. And look, there's a lot of avenues of how that, like, do you send them back home while they go through that process? Do they stay here? I don't
Hmm.
know. I'm not the one to figure that out. But I, like Jordan said, like, I do know that it shouldn't be rounding up people like at gunpoint and throwing them in a van, throwing them on
Hmm.
a bus, and them not knowing where they're going, not knowing where their family is, not knowing if they're going to live through this experience. Like, that shouldn't be the process that we're going through, like in any country, but especially this country. Um, so all that being said, like I said, I do understand that, like, I don't know what the right process or
Yeah.
policy, or, whatever is, but I do think that
Yeah.
the people in charge of it should be able to come up with something more humane than the route that we're going down right now.
It's a
Yeah,
it's a fair assumption, or it's a fair expectation, not assumption. It's a fair
yeah,
expectation to go to if I'm going to try to immigrate to like Canada or to Japan or to, I don't know, Zimbabwe, like any other country. I should there should be a process for me because I'm not a naturalized citizen of those countries. There should be a process that I can go about to be able to, if I will want to become there's a pathway to citizenship, I would have to go through that, right? Like
right,
it's a fair expectation. I think what is missed often is the process through this, it hasn't all one is not always fair,
yeah,
and
yeah,
and could take years for folks to go through, and that speaks to us not having the right infrastructure for how to support people coming in, right? Like, but we have enough money to support people becoming ICE agents, and
yeah,
that's where it's like, well, don't you think that we could take the money that we're putting towards the ICE and put it into more structural supports of like maybe they need more spaces to actually process applications and
Yeah.
have and train people how to vet people coming in. Like maybe that's what we need. Can we do that more? Like, can we invest more money and more resources into that?
Yeah.
Do people need access to like more sanctuary cities and resources that in those
Right.
sanctuary cities that get them connected to like schools and jobs and like can we pour more money into those programs, right? And so
Right.
I I think what is frustrating is it seems like the solution that our government is saying is we just need more enforcement, more law enforcement, like you said, of like
Hmm.
treating everyone as if they're criminals and lawbreakers and um yeah, treating everyone as if they're villains that need to be destroyed, as
Yeah.
opposed
Yeah.
to really looking at like this is someone who is just trying to make a better life for themselves and their family, right?
Yeah.
And there's I it's very interesting because we were strangely enough this is connected to Jonah, in some weird way. Like
Coming soon.
I'll talk. Um, there's like this kind of weird sentiment that comes out, and it's not felt by everybody in the United States. I don't necessarily see it on the more liberal side of the United States, but I do think there's definitely this aspect of it in more conservative circles, moderate circles. But if somebody is going to abuse or cheat a system, then we would rather that system not be in place at all,
Mm.
just because we don't want someone to get away or to scheme or to take
Right.
advantage. And
Right.
I actually think some aspect of that is admirable because it's like wanting to make sure that people have. I think at the bare base, it's wanting to make sure people have like some level of fairness,
Hmm.
right? Like people who do good get good things, and people who do bad get bad things, kind of thing, right? Um, but I think what's hard about that is we do miss out on the humanity, and so for example, why I brought up Jonah was Jonah was preaching to Nineveh, was asked to preach to Nineveh,
Yeah.
and he's like, I'm not going. Like, I know what God is going to do. He's going to let them people repent, even though they've been engaging in all this type of stuff. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
then what did God do? Sends a huge fish, swallows Jonah. Jonah's in there for 3 days. He prays, and then this fish spits him back up on land. And then and so Jonah pledges to do what God's bidding. God says, "Go to Nineveh and preach." And then Jonah preaches, and then Nineveh repents, and then Jonah gets bitter.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because he's like, why, like you did exactly what I said you're gonna do. Like, kind of like sometimes we can be like Jonah and thinking like the bad people don't deserve good things, and I that's a very shallow way of looking at the whole story. I know Jonah is more in depth than that, but I think
Sure.
as an example of like looking at like some of our policies and structures, like you know I'm sure people would be on for a pathway to citizenship that's more humane, but people
Yeah.
cannot seem to get out of their minds like, oh, some folks are going to take advantage, so therefore nobody should have access to it. And it's like, hang on, like
Right.
if you were put in that situation, I would imagine you would want an easier pathway to citizenship. And
Yeah.
there's
Yep.
there's even running jokes of like most Americans probably wouldn't even be able, most like people who are born here probably wouldn't be able to pass a citizenship test because of how sometimes ridiculous it can be in terms of how much history and recitation that people need to have regarding that. So
Yeah.
there's a lot that I said within that, like even just trying to compare to John, but
Yeah.
where you at with that?
Yeah. Jonah coming soon. Um, Man, that actually brought up a lot of thoughts, but I don't want to go to that first. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with everything you were saying because I think that what I will say is that when I say this, I'm not talking about anyone in particular. I'm just saying the part that I do feel for politicians, period, in general, is that it's like, man, how do you go about it? I don't know. Like it's super difficult. It's just
Yeah.
that, but
Yeah.
I do think it should be easy to see that this is not the right way. Um, to go
Yeah.
about it, whether you're right, left, Christian, non-Christian, whatever. Um, so yeah, it's really tough, right? Like I think that because I see so many sides of this argument to where, again, like where I firmly stand is this is not the right way to go about it. Um, but then
Mhm.
I also do hear people that say like, to your point of like, putting money into resources on like sanctuary cities and things like that. Like I can hear the argument of people saying like, man, like, but like there's so many things that people from this country who the politicians are supposed to support need as
Yeah.
well. Like there are programs that people right here in America need, veterans and things like that, right? That are like veterans are one of the worst like treated people,
Absolutely. Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
country. And so I can hear people that say that as well, but there has to be some sort of common ground where it's like, okay, yes, this is wrong, but this is also wrong and we need to figure it out. And so I don't know if that's like, look, I know there's a lot of laws where it's like state by state, right? Like where if you live in Idaho, if you live in Minnesota, if you live in New Jersey, like you vote and it's like it's legal here, but it's not legal in, you know, Washington, or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm like, I don't know, does there need to be something like that to where certain states are like, okay, like we will accept, people immigrating, you know, maybe for certain parts of the country it's for South American countries in Central America, maybe some,
Mhm.
some again, I don't know how this works because I'm also kind of thinking of it as like how I think of church, where it's like this church supports, churches in Europe, and this
Yeah.
church
Yeah. Yeah.
supports
Yeah.
churches in
Foreign missions.
Africa.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I'm like, look, I don't know how that works politically, but like, are there certain states that are like, hey, like we want to vote to where part of our state taxes like goes to supporting immigrants that want to, while they legally become citizens, they live in Iowa, or they live in, that's probably a bad state to choose for this conversation, but
But
Pennsylvania.
I mean, but Chase, I love that idea, man. Like
I mean, that's,
if you put it on people's, like, I mean, I can see it getting shot down by in terms of ballots, but like
yeah,
I'm just even thinking like with Washington State. Let's just take my state for example. If you put it on our ballots that, you know, like, we're gonna impose this like tax that is about immigration reform, and it's
yeah,
gonna be like, every 2 cents, but it's 2 cents out of your paycheck or something, or but it's gonna come, or it comes out of your property tax, like for your home, like, right, like like a 2% or something. I don't know, but let's say they devoted that towards immigration reform, and this is how it would look. I mean, I would vote for that. I would
yeah,
love that, actually. Like I'm okay with using my resources to do that. Right. And sometimes what the reason why things don't go through the ballot like that is because it just takes a lot of red tape and a lot
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
of
Compromise.
compromise, social connections that some people just don't want to give into. Some people,
Yeah,
I think that comes back to, like, again, like, there's this idea of the American image where, and I don't like it. It's ultimately reflective of just like capitalism, right? Like, we provide these services and goods, and we get rewarded for those services and goods, and we can
right.
market and monetize and make it. But and that's not a uh I won't say like that's a system. It's just an economic system like any other system. Like it
Right.
just is what it is. But I guess what I'm getting caught up with about it when it comes to like the political standpoint is people we can get really caught up with saying like people get out what they put into it. And
Mm-hmm.
kind of like you get what you earn kind of thing. And I do think there's some truth and validity to that, but there's also a belief that these systems exploit people. They're
Yeah.
like no one, I don't know, I don't care how hard you work. And this is just getting on another topic, but there's no one who can honestly work a day's wages and then hope to get $1 billion by the end of their life. Right? Like
Right.
you get
Right.
$1 billion because you invest in companies and you buy,
Yeah.
and if you have the resources to be able to, like, that's how you get $1 billion. And the fact that we have two billionaires who are immigrants like making these choices that actually
Yeah.
negatively affect like our immigration and our political system is very frustrating and very
Yeah.
um annoying, like and so disconnected from the American people. Like it's just
Yes.
very much like they don't reflect, like they don't know what it's like to be like working class and just trying to earn a living and then having to participate in this system. But you know, we're one medical expense from bankruptcy. You know, like
Yeah. Yeah.
like it's just like no one, they don't have to experience that. And um they're not trying to, you know, get their citizenship and then also trying to worry about like I got to go to work, but if I say something at work someone could report me or my neighbor could report me. You know, that's not coming up for them. And so yeah, I mean, obviously it speaks to us needing to have empathy, but also it speaks to the fault, the negative sides and ultimately the lies of capitalism that come up too.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, man, it's just it's a frustrating thing because even that thought, right, of like putting that on a ballot for state to state, it's like it's so hard to even try to find like where people can compromise, right? Like people don't even want to compromise, right? Like because I could
Yeah.
see it, you know, even if we did somehow come to that, I could see people being like, no, like every state should do it, or the other states, no state should do it. When it's like we sometimes you just got to be okay with like if that state votes not to do it, then okay, like that state votes not to do it,
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. And so that's how I kind of see like again, it's a reason I hate politics is that it's like you're never gonna make everyone happy, which is just something in life in
So
general,
true.
not just politics.
So true.
But I think
Yeah.
like some people are so emotionally invested in politics that it's like even when you come to a compromise where it's like you wanted this and sure it's not going to be universal in every state or whatever, but like it's better than it was. And I think sometimes in politics like you have to count that as a win, right? Cuz maybe it gets a little
Yeah.
bit better
Yeah.
this time and then down the road it gets a little bit better and again like a win for one person is a loss for another person unfortunately. And so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
gonna sway.
Zero sum
It's
game
yeah,
is
it's gonna
just real.
swing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
like sometimes you're gonna feel like like man, this is worse than it was before, and some people are gonna be like, this is way better than it was before. Which is why politics, I think, is it feels built to divide us, unfortunately,
yeah.
and I hate that. But
And it's hard. Like it's I'm glad you brought this up because like the politics is it's ultimately how we decide to how we make sense of our reality, and also like how we decide what to do with our resources, like our money,
right,
right? Like
yeah, yeah,
that's ultimately what it is at the end of the day. um and people's money is different. People have different access levels to
yeah,
money. People have different like people like it's just so it, and it has a different meaning to people experience. But um what I think is important, connected within just this idea around like um just politics is it's it is personal. And it's frustrating. What am I trying to say? So a brother actually said this to me, and this was really powerful. It was the evangelist here in Seattle, Barrett. He. This was actually shortly after the Charlie Kirk stuff,
hmm
because I had posted about it, and I still stand by what I said on it. Like I don't, I like I felt. And he didn't disagree with me. This the evangelist didn't disagree with me. He actually was like, I hear where you're coming from, kind of thing. Um, and so we had a good conversation, just around like the evangelist was sharing, Barrett was saying like, you know, it's a pretty like like I don't like politics. He was like, I don't like being involved in it either. But he's like if I had it my way, I would just take my family and kind of be recluse and kind of remove myself from
yeah,
the
yeah,
from talking about it, like have a farm or something like that. And I'm like, yeah, that's good. Like I can understand that. But then he said this. He said, but I also recognize that that's a very privileged position for me to occupy. For me to just not want to be engaged in politics and essentially my life be unaffected by it, right? And I was like, wow, like yeah, that is true, like right, like because for me talking around politics, like I don't like always talking about, but I also recognize like there are decisions that get made that do affect not only me, not only you, but like they I've seen them disproportionately affecting people who are not the majority, you know, and affecting them in different ways, right? Like folks not being able to have similar rights, or um folks not being able to have accountability from the system. Like the law enforcement system is supposed to benefit everyone, but it's negatively impacting certain people. And so I'm like, man, I see that, and I think that could be people within our families, right? Like people within our
Yeah.
communities. And so I'm like, man, this feels personal. And I'm like, that's because it is, right? Like it is
Hmm.
personally, and that's like, it is personally connected to my own lived experience, right? Whereas for Barrett, it wasn't. It's not so much
Right.
connected to, right? And I think that I was just really encouraged to see that be named. You know what I mean? Like, and to see,
Yeah.
and for us to just be able to talk, um, and it's hard because I'm like, I feel weird like demanding that people see it as personal, but I also can't say that political isn't personal. You know, like it really much,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
tied. How we decide to allocate resources affects people's lives. And
Yeah.
that's why we see a lot of people's passions come out. That's how you see a lot of people be so adamant, and they'd be like, yeah, we told you this for 30 years to do it this way, but you haven't been doing it this way, right? Like, and we
Yeah.
can joke about that stuff, but it's just like I can understand where people are coming from when they sound those alarms, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. Yeah, man. And this this whole situation's so difficult, man, because I also started like literally like right before we came on, and I was kind of thinking through it a little bit. Um, this other thought like came down, and again, before I say this, like the situation that happened in Minneapolis with Renee Good, like was wrong in every way, right? And unnecessary, like shouldn't have happened, kind of thing. But I also started thinking down the path of like, because I actually thought of this again a little earlier when you were speaking. You were saying that, um, sorry, I'm blanking on exactly what you said, but the point that you were making is about um, like are these people who work for ICE or law enforcement like properly trained, right? You said something to that
Yeah.
effect. Um,
Yeah.
and so I was actually thinking about that prior to us hopping on, because something that I started noticing for me, and I know everyone's like, you know, stuff that they get is different or whatever, is that when I started looking into, so back when, so Zoe Church, shout out. Well, a handful of episodes ago, I was telling you about how we did that initiative where we were the church was asking for people to donate for SNAP benefits
Mhm. Yeah.
and WIC benefits, or whatever. When I started kind of looking into like everything that was going on, and even like with the No Kings protest, like looking into the ICE stuff, I think because I was like looking into all that stuff, I started getting these ads. I can't remember if it was on like YouTube or Instagram or something about like becoming an ICE agent, and I was like, this is so weird. But it made me
Yeah, yeah,
think
yeah.
when this
That's your
situation,
algorithm.
yeah, because I was looking into all that stuff. But and it was interesting though, because what it made me think was, man, is there someone that's just like sitting at home, right? That it's like, um, yeah, like I don't like my job. Like, why don't I try that? Like, basically, what I'm saying is that, I don't get anything like that for like wanting to become a police officer or wanting to become a
Yeah. Well,
fireman. So it's
it's
like, what
interesting.
kind of training do they get? And it's like,
Yeah,
not again,
I
this is not
see
an
it. I
excuse
do
for the
see
person
that
that shot
with
her, but yeah.
totally,
Anyways,
totally. I do see there is I think because of our system, and we have such a very like large. Like we even call it the prison industrial complex. Like it's a huge industry. It makes
Right.
billions of dollars. So like there's, I mean, in Seattle, like you can find like, hey, you want to be a police officer, work for SPD? Like you want to work for Tacoma PD? You want like there's always jobs
Yeah.
available. And I do think um like to I haven't seen it like on YouTube per se, like but I can
Yeah.
understand those. I remember I haven't seen it recently on YouTube, but I remember maybe about like 2020 to 2024, I was seeing them pop up a lot of just like when you watch this like content around like agents or police or things like that, like it'll come up of like want to join SPD, and
Right.
I'm like, no, but I can also be like, wow, ooh, this is how you're recruiting, and it's
Right.
connected to this political content, or it's connected. I'm like, who do you think is watching this? Like,
Right. Yeah,
because
exactly.
I'm not
Exactly.
the target audience for it, but I can see like how this would be appealing for some folks.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So I just thought that was an interesting thing where it's like, man, are these people that are being asked to enforce this stuff? And again, it's not an excuse for, because something I did want to say too, though, is that, and this is for everyone, but especially if you're a Christian, is that like, again, when I say this, not the like the individual that shot Renee Good, like deserves to go through the legal process and, the consequences that they have, like that's what they have earned with their actions. So I'm not speaking to that person individually, but as Christians, it's like looking at the organization rather than individuals, if that makes sense. To where it's like,
Yeah, yeah,
because it made me
yeah.
think like, who are some of these people? Just someone that was just sitting at home and clicked on this, like, sure, like I need a job and I'm gonna click
I
on. You
just
know
need
what I
a
mean? It's like,
job.
right,
Yeah,
right.
I just need a job.
Um, and I know it's very similar to the police officer conundrum, right? Where it's like it's the inverse of what we were just talking about treating like um immigrants all as the outliers, right?
Hmm.
Um, and so I know that becomes a slippery slope, but it's just
Yeah.
it sucks because I feel like politicians have put us all in a bad situation, including the people
Yes. Yeah.
that are
And
enforcing.
politicians do. I was gonna say, I mean, I've seen left politicians be criticized for the amount of money they take from these larger organizations that tend to not reflect, more liberal values. And I
Right.
and so like I do think there's some level to the higher you get into this and the more influence you have, the more you're likely to be controlled for a specific outcome. And
Yeah.
so, and the more detached it doesn't connect to the people who are actually going to be affected by these. Um, my man, I do got to get going because I got to
Yeah.
get ready to watch maybe. But man,
Yes.
I love you.
Good
This is awesome.
conversation.
It's
Love you
my
too,
man.
man. Yes, this is a great conversation. And maybe we can do, you know, if we feel like we need to do another part, we can do another part. But
Absolutely, yeah.
next episode you guys see, we'll do a little bit more of a of a easing into 2026 the next episode that we do, and then
Yeah,
we
like
will
New Year's
jump.
resolution, right?
Yeah, something like that. Or even I don't know if you've watched the Stranger Things finale yet, but that's a pretty polarizing
I need
topic
to.
here
Well,
as well.
everyone keeps telling me to watch Stranger Things, and I have not given I
Any
wasn't
of it?
interested when I tried watching the first episode. I'd have to start
Oh
ever.
wow. I didn't know that. How did I not know that? That's crazy.
Yeah.
I actually think you would like
So
it.
maybe when the baby's born, like the new
Yeah.
baby, I might just binge it there because that's what I'll probably be doing. Like yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you'll like it. But I know you gotta get going. But yeah, so next time we'll talk about some sports, something, goals for 2026, and then we will jump into Jonah here in the next couple weeks to a month. Um but you guys, thank you so much for joining us. I hope that this conversation helped maybe filter through some of the things that you're thinking and feeling, or wanting to take action in XYZ. way, we do encourage you to do so and to let us know what you're thinking and what you're feeling in the comments. Any particular thing that we said that you want to speak to or question that you may have. And as always, if it's nothing about this and it's about spiritual things, if you want to learn more about God, learn more about the Bible, we're happy to answer those questions as well. I do want to point you towards our TikTok. I'll be posting clips from this, but also I'm doing a series of walking through the Bible in a year where I'm doing short videos each week walking through a book of the Bible. So find us in with the new pod on TikTok. But we love you guys. Thank you for joining us, and we are signing off.
Yeah.